Dear editors who ended a relationship with their best friend. What was your breaking point? When my dad was dying of stage 4 cancer. She just smiled and said, I didn't like him anyway. Like. In the same room as him. He was awake and it was one of the last things he ever heard. Our friendship had been really codependent and unhealthy for years. But that was the sentence that made me realize that she wasn't just edgy and kind of cold. She was actually a bad person. I only met up with her one time after that, for closure. Edit. I was 21 at the time. He married a woman whose upbringing had resulted in her being repulsed by physical contact and sex in general. To try to fill the void in his life, he made a pass at my wife. I have not talked to him since she told me what he did. He promised me he would pay my rent with our business profits while I went out of town, but instead bought a truck with our money and told my landlord that I had the money but refused to pay. When my wife ran off with him, the best revenge is to let him have her. Ditching me for a better something for the 100th time while I waited outside a concert with his ticket. I waited to see how long it would take for him to text me first. When it happens, I'll let you know. Whether we spoke or hung out was fully dependent on me initiating it. So when I decided to step back, we stopped talking. Edit. For some context. By the time we stopped talking, it was the end of high school and we had both become completely different from each other. So this wasn't sudden. I think I tried to hang on to the friendship simply because it was the longest one I had. Realized I was the one keeping the friendship alive and she didn't really care. She's been passive aggressive and had lied and gaslighted in the past, but she had become ruder and more dismissive lately and I was too angry with her to let it go. Looking back, it was a long time coming. She helped my ex break into my email to prove I was cheating on him. Spoiler alert. I wasn't. She did lots of really shitty things and gaslighted the hell out of everything to make me apologize for them. The breaking point was when she said, I know you think you really love fiance registered sign S name. But really, they should be preemptively arped to get rid of some of that pride. Take them down a notch. I was horrified. I ended the game night as quickly and safely as I could and ended the friendship immediately after. She tried to explain why she was right. Then she tried to figure out how this was my fault and I was unreasonable for saying that she was wrong. At most she was willing to admit to being tactless. 6 months later she reached out again. But it was to apologize for my misunderstanding her words and offering to forgive me. Apparently she should have anticipated I wasn't ready to hear hard truths about the love of my life. Yeah. Nope. I don't need that. At all. Still not friends with her. Edit. Was using my house as a staging excuse point so he could FCK around on his wife, who was also a friend of mine. I was best man in their wedding. Ghost edit. I've mentioned this before. And it strangely needed clarifying that none of this came to light until after the fact. Who else is here wondering why their best friend left because they were ghosted and never got any closure? Obligatory edit. Thank you for my first award. And this is my top upvoted comment too. I guess my crippling sadness over my ex-bestie, who I haven't talked to in like 5-6 years, is good for something. Colon. He had a friend that stole from me. Defended the friend instead of backing me. At that point you might as well have carried the other side when he stole it. Well, when he started constantly bullying me I took the hint. When I realized her childhood family was too dysfunctional and she was taking her anger frustration out on me since mine was not. She was always belittling me and talking over me and I just realized it wasn't worth it. She was funny and we liked the same things, but if I spent more than 2 hours with her, I came home feeling worn down. She had a tendency of being selfish, while making me feel guilty that I was the selfish one. After spending my wedding day focused on her drama, I kept her at arm's length. And the birth of my first child was also overshadowed by her drama. I cut her loose. Gaslighting is terrible. I still worry I'm being too self-centered. They became a meth addict and blamed everyone else for their problems. I tried everything I could to help them for over a year. I ruined a lot of my own life trying to be there for them. It was a hard lesson to learn that sometimes the people that you really love and care about are beyond help. It hurts to remember the person that she used to be and admit to myself that the person I knew is gone. She was just accepting failure every time. She was dealt a horrible hand in life and inherited her dead mom's dilapidated hoarding house and moved in. I offered to help her to clean it countless times, but the last time I went in it looked like it needed condemning. She also dated a strung out deadbeat guy and they are so toxic together. Definitely lots of Xanax and probably heroin involved. The final straw was they bought a husky with no previous dog knowledge. Her nor her boyfriend could afford flea meds and the dog was likely anemic from the fleas. I spent my own money to help with her poor dog to clean it up. The next day her boyfriend was asking on FB where he could buy an Xbox or PC for the Lolo. I couldn't stand the thought of not coughing up the $100 to get flea meds and a flea bath for your clearly neglected dog, but they can afford Xanax and boxes. I blocked her on everything. We were friends for 10 years, but I couldn't watch her become such a piece of shit anymore. Wow, this happened just today for me. For me and my best friend when we ended our relationship. It was a long process of me not being able to stand up for myself and to just apologize for my actions no matter what I did. And them being the one who made me feel bad about a lot of things. At the beginning of August 2020 we took a break from our friendship and I took a look back at the years my friend and I had and realized that our relationship was pretty toxic. And despite 2 weeks of silence. And a few days after coming back for another chance of being friends. We both agreed that our relationship and friendship was over. It took 6 whole years for me to realize that that person wasn't all who I thought it was. I got sober and turned my life around. She wanted to stay in the same spot on her couch. Pretend her issues didn't exist. And make someone else responsible for her sobriety. She was firmly entrenched in the belief she was a victim and couldn't comprehend being in charge of her own life. It got to the point I was having anxiety before I went to hang out with her and I couldn't take it anymore. He ran off with my GF after swearing for weeks that he would never do such a thing. The best part was that I was best man at his wedding and he was married at the time. Honestly. Looking back on it, I'm glad it happened. I got to kick 2 pieces of shit out of my life on the same day. I met my wife 2 years later and I've never been happier. Edit. Holy moly, did this blow up overnight? Thanks for all the awards and such. I'm glad to have struck a chord with so many people. And thanks for all the replies and well wishes. I hope everyone gets an experience like I got and can make lemonade out of lemons. We dated a few times and it just never worked out. It was hard to go back to being friends after that. Stole $400 from me when he found out the girl he liked actually liked me. We were in our mid-20s. High school never ends. We both moved away to college. And didn't keep in check. Haven't seen her in 3 years. Not sure she'd recognize me. I was great friends with this girl in high school. We graduated in 2009. Went our separate ways for college. And lost touch. Long story short. A random Facebook message in 2018 led to her standing as a bridesmaid at my wedding in February 2020. She turned out to be a pathological liar. Lied about having an abortion. Made it out to be my fault. Lied about the D-list celebrity she was dating. Getting into Harvard. Made a mutual friend believe I cock-blocked her. Not only did I cut her off, but had to cut off our mutual friend because she continued to try to fix her. She sexually assaulted me a few times while I was drunk. I found this out a few months after, and I was just f***ing sick of the humiliation she caused me, so I ditched her. We never had classes together, and grew apart. Wouldn't come to my wedding even though he introduced my wife and I. Tried to explain to him there was nothing I wanted more other than for him to be there. His girlfriend at the time didn't want to go because she was insecure with her appearance. We haven't seen each other since. My wife and I will be celebrating our 33rd anniversary soon. In the space of a few months, my mother died. My first marriage imploded. I moved 3k miles away from everything I knew, having a miscarriage in a tiny town motel along the way. After 3 weeks of ghosting me, after 25 years of supposed BFness, she told me, though I'd never complained or asked advice or for support, BC I am overly self-contained weirdo, that my life choices were stressing her out and she couldn't be friends with me. She reached out about 2 years later via email, and although that was 8 years ago, I'm still too angry to respond. She never made time for me. She quit her job to be a full-time LuLaRoe mom boss and apparently doesn't have time anymore. Truth be told, I miss her kids more. I hate it, but I held on longer than I should have. I last saw her oldest daughter a year ago. I miss them so much. My GF at the time and I both did something that hurt her feelings. I apologized the next day, but my GF never did. She decided to forgive my GF but not me. Then my GF left me to get with her instead. She had been making new friends and forgetting I even existed. I had a suicide attempt and they both wanted nothing to do with me once I stopped being fun. Finally came out as bisexual and he decided that meant I was trying to FCK both him and his wife. Gay best friend in high school. I came out to him as bi. He said, no you're not. You're gay or you're straight. You have to choose. Bi erasure is real. I got belittled and bullied more and more eventually. Friends in common would lie and make stories that she would buy and gossip even more about. I truly loved her, but she did hurt me so much at the end I could not take it anymore and decided to close the chapter. Never felt better since then. Now I'm very cautious with my friendships and set boundaries. Wasn't a bad guy, but I eventually realized I couldn't have someone in my life that compared our friendship to ones I had with others. House got robbed in college and somebody made off with like 3k that I was saving up on tips. Found out 2 years later it was him, and the twisted part was he was there for me the entire time from like 30 minutes after I had found my house and called it in. Never suspected him till I found out and it all made sense. Sick narcissistic FCK. He'll eventually FCK up his own life without me wishing ill upon him. I don't need that kind of poison in my life. I'm trying to be a better person every day, not worse. They broke my Lego Death Star. My former best friend was. Oof. We're mostly on good terms now. But there was a time where we fking hated each other's guts. He had anger issues and couldn't think straight when he got mad. I had the horrible trait of always wanting the last laugh. The man says something stupid. I correct him. Then he gets mad. Then I get mad back because I didn't want him having the satisfaction of thinking he's right. And we got off at each other. The man even stabbed me with a pencil in the eye once. I'd be half blind if it weren't for the fact that he wasn't paying attention and stabbed me with the eraser end and didn't hit me dead center in the eye. Just very slightly to the side of it. That was the final breaking point. Again. He and I have gotten over that and we're on good terms. And he's managed his anger while I got rid of my stupid little mentality. Thankfully, I have a new current best friend. And she's the most relatable person I know. And he's doing well in the friend department too. They became extremely egotistical and cocky. I told them so and called them out. They got pissed at me and said I was just jealous of how cool they were. This was year 6. And I got rid of him. When I found out she was talking shit behind my back about me. Continued to drink and agitate his unchecked bipolar disorder despite my pleas and everyone else's pleas who loved him. He became violent. Risked my own safety and health many times. And started hanging around shady people. For a long time I blamed myself for the spiral he set into motion. What if I had been more patient? Gotten his family involved when he started getting really bad? Just anything. I have finally found peace with the fact my own mental health is just as bad and I did the best I could. The person I knew him to be is now dead. And although I mourn nearly every day for that, I truly hope the new person he is finds his way in life. I just don't wish to be around to see it. Whatever you're going through, OP, I wish you the best. Addiction. I tried to support him at first. I confronted him, took part in an intervention, checked up on him. All I got in return was someone who lied to my face and stole whatever he could get off me. If you ever had to deal with an addict that you loved, you know how mentally and emotionally draining it can be. I have no regrets. I put in as much as I could. I'm not going to harm my life in order to save his. If he ever gets clean, I will be there for him, but I will do so cautiously. Unfortunately, I feel like the next time I see him, he will be in his casket. She had this massive crush on a very nice guy who tried to let her down gently the best that he could. I don't remember the exact details, but I started taking his side because she was becoming overly obsessive with him despite me trying to convince her to move on and that he wasn't interested. She stopped talking to me for at least a month. The nail in the coffin was the month I started dating my now wife, who she did not get along with at all. She constantly played the victim in whatever negative interaction she had, and it just wore me out to the point where I intentionally started letting go. Completely lying about everything. He was my best man, and then a year later he's lying about absolutely everything. Just got sick of it and stopped talking to him. Then he acts all weird like I'm ditching my girlfriend. Really odd. When she made a glib comment about suicidal people who in her opinion should have killed themselves already. Knowing that I deal with depression and chronic suicidal ideation, I immediately stopped responding to her texts and haven't spoken to her in 3 years. I didn't like the person I was becoming. We were both larger gay guys, but I had a better dating record pool despite being more reserved and heavier than he was. He started to treat me like the ugly friend that he was doing a favor for when we went out on the town. After I ended the friendship, he tried to reconnect via a new friend and ended up just alienating the guy from us both. It was sad because he'd obviously lost his sobriety and wanted to blame it on how I treated him. It taught me a lot about how to deal with manipulative people, and I'm better off for it. After one of our mutual close friends unexpectedly passed away, ex-friend said some pretty horrendous stuff to me in a text message that pushed me to attempt to take my own life. I was in a pretty dark place at the time due to postnatal depression and bereavement, so my ability to brush off her cruelty was impaired. I haven't heard from her since. She doesn't know the impact she had. I'm still here because of some random guy who was driving past and grabbed me to stop me from jumping. I'm doing much better now. One word. Meth. They admitted they'd been a heavy meth addict. I just assumed he was FK'd up on something else, or he was just overtly hyper. He was trying to make an affair happen with my son's mom, inviting her to keep him company on a long drive to this job he had at the time. I knew this because she told me about it and how it made her uncomfortable that he would call the house when people still hand landlines, asking for me at times he fully fking knew I was at work. It sucks because his now wife was my best friend in high school for a while, and I never once thought about her as anything but a friend because I met her through him as the girl he was crazy about. Like friends are supposed to behave. In that sense, I lost 2 good friends since hanging with her would mean him being in my life. He sexually harassed my fiancée. Best friends for over 20 years. She joined. No wait. Made a cult with my sister. An actual cult. The New Age white savior. Cultural appropriation. Pseudo-psychological circle jerking, offering healing modalities involving ancestors and taking ayahuasca and getting dysentery and making crap sexual and codependent relationship decisions while the kids have no beds of their own and get untreated long-term lice infestations type. They bonded over how I never talked about anything real and my life was pointless, and they couldn't stand me working to providing a stable home life with consistent food and shelter and clothing for my kids. The cult dissolved for lack of funds, direction, substance, and sanity. They don't speak to each other anymore, and I don't speak to either of them. To be honest though, They were always crap friends, so it's for the best. When I was pregnant with my first kid, everything inside of me screamed when I was around her and I pushed it aside. So, if you're asking because you're having doubts about someone, those doubts are probably well founded and will be real clear in retrospect.